The results are normal. Anything you want to flag?
No, I'm fine.
Mom! Hi, darling.
How was your trip?
Dull. Extraordinarily dull.
Our next contract's a big one. The target is the CEO of the largest operation in the U.S. You'll be binding to Colin Tate. We can't afford any mistakes on this one.
Ready?
Right, Possessor. That is done by David Cronenberg's son, Brendan. So this should be interesting. Okay, so when this came out a couple years ago, I was really intrigued. I saw people talking about it on social and just going, this is like really unique. This is a really good horror movie. And I'm just like, okay, like, talk to me more about it. And then I saw the plot and I went, that's actually an interesting way of going at the concept of possession. All right, I'm into this. So I went and checked it out. So this movie is about a corporation that their agents have contracts to kill people. So instead of getting the blood on their hands, they kidnap people, and through mind transferring, they basically are able to possess that person so they can fulfill the contract. So it feels very like Hitman, if you ever played that series, but with mind transferring. So it's like, all right, that's I haven't seen that with like a possession film, because a typical possession film is going to be a demon, a ghost involved, or like a poltergeist. But with this case, it's like, no, it's mind transferring. And I like the added bonus of it being like a corporation that is basically a hit, like Hitman. But instead of, getting the blood on their hands, they use technology to help with fulfilling our contracts. I think that's really smart and that's really clever. And it's a nice breath of fresh air, because in this movie there's nothing supernatural about the film. So when you're given a title like Possessor, you start immediately thinking, okay, it's something supernatural. But in this case, it's not. So it's a nice breath of fresh air. So you're getting something new out of that regard right out of the gate. So this movie is written and directed by Brandon Cronenberg. As I said, that's David Cronenberg's son, who gave us, The Fly, and then Dead Ringers, Scanners, The Board, The Brood. So I kind of knew what I was getting into in certain regards, but it feels very different. Brendan definitely has his father's stamp on things. Like when it comes to the gore, it's more disturbing than gory, but the times where they do show gore, it is quite realistic and very disturbing to look at, especially if that gore is like filling up 65-70% of your screen. So you're like, okay, stop it. Like, it really gets under your skin and makes you cringe, because it is the way they do make it like realistic, and the fact that it's covering up a huge percentage of your screen. So you really can't escape it. And it's also, at times, it is mandatory. So you're like, oh, so there's an actual reason why that's there. Why we're seeing this. It's not just thrown in there just to gross you out. So that's cool. Performance-wise, somehow, like, both Cronenbergs, the Cronenberg family, whenever they do movies, they can get really good performances out of actors. So like, like with David with The Fly, at the time, you had Jeff Goldblum and Gina Davis. Goldblum was more known for doing comedy type stuff. And then, some years later, he then gets Jurassic Park, and then he's a household name. Gina Davis, she was getting, like, roles here and there, but The Fly was, like, 2 years pre-Beetlejuice. So, and that was the movie that kind of put her on the map. So you kind of forget, like, these, like, actors that them, like, so well for, them do something, like, horrifying or dramatic, and you're like, man, they're really good. And Brandon carries that trait as well. Everybody in this movie does a really good job. I would definitely say this movie and his next movie, which is Infinity Pool, which I have reviewed, where that film, you main leads in that one is Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth. And it's like, at the time, Mia Goth, you were really seeing her in, like, X or, like, some other horror stuff. But with Alexander, you were seeing him in, like, like, all over the map. He was doing dramatic roles. He was even trying to do Tarzan, that long-forgotten Tarzan movie. So, it was, like, really interesting to see. And now he's doing this, like, very, like, dramatic and creepy atmospheric film. So, Brandon does a really good job with that, and I'm pretty sure he got that from his father. Now, like I said, the concept of how they possess people is very cool. It's very unique. It's something where it's like, okay, we've seen, like, the mind transferring thing done before, but not when it comes to the topic of possession movies. Because it's always something paranormal, and you always affiliate the word possession with paranormal. But in this case, it goes, no, actually, it can work in other forms outside of supernatural. And this movie does a really good job at doing that and kind of breaking the mold that we're used to. So it's really cool. Now, this movie can be a bit slow. It can be a bit slow, because it is very much a very plotting film, because you have to, because it's an agent trying to fulfill a contract. So you do have to kind of sit through the slow parts of it, where you're just kind of like, come on, let's get to the action. Let's get to the final boss. With this one, it's, you actually have to go through everything. So it can be a bit slow for some people. It's definitely a little slow in some regards to me, but it makes sense why it is, because, if you're an agent and you're trying to fulfill a contract, you have to take it step by step. You can't just jump ahead and possibly ruin everything. So this movie does a really good job with that. And also, it can be a little confusing at times. Like, when I first saw the film, towards the end, I went like, huh? Like, I'm a little confused, a little bit. And then watched it again and also read other people's thoughts and was like, oh, yeah, okay. I get it. So I would say in your first viewing, it can possibly be a little confusing, but not entirely. So, it depends on how it goes, I guess. So I think, Brandon does a really good job at creating something that is unique, especially when it comes to the topic of possessions, and something that is just, it's weird, it's has great performances, and is also, like, cringe to watch the gore, because it's like, you're in my face, and you look super realistic, unlike something like Friday the 13th, where it at times tries to be realistic, but more or less goes, we're just going to go goofy with this. This is more like, no, we're dead serious, we're trying to be realistic, and it's in your face. So, like, okay. And like I said, like, the second I saw the trailer, immediately I rushed out and saw it, and I 100% do not regret doing that. So, and it was also because of this movie that when the trailer came out for Infinity Pool, I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to see this too. So, cool. So, this movie does a very cool and interesting job at trying to be its own thing, and also does have moments in there that are like, oh, that's screwed up. And also, I love how it takes, like, it's not supernatural, so when, the agents, like, possess people, they're almost struggling with their own humanity, because what they see is they're in the body of somebody else, but they have their own humanity back in theirs. So they're really struggling with that, which is, they even say, like, yeah, you would get, there's times in this job where, you probably would get PTSD. So I like how that's a sense of realism when it comes to that. And I really like that. So if you like interesting, weird stuff, and let me just clarify this, if you like Cronenberg stuff, then you probably have already seen this. If not, I would definitely recommend checking this out. It's a really interesting film, and yeah, very Cronenberg.
I need to know what she's done to me.
He's become a danger.
Where is she? Come out or I'll do it!
Sometimes that small thought is all it takes to lose control.